Oh, we got datter, like you say in Rhode Island.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Yeah, I know a lot of you are like, there's a primary? Well, I'm sorry, but you got to wake up, people, because this is the best system we have in the free world, you know, and it doesn't get any better than this, even though I know the candidates may not be scintillating at this point, but this is what we do. And I do think that while you probably have some kind of malaise, that there's always an interest that begins to burn over the course of August and September when it comes to our elections. The primary is right around the corner after Labor Day, and then, of course, the general election in November. I don't need to tell you that. I know that. But we've got the best brain trust that we can put together with Tim White and Ted Nesi here to bang out the numbers. And so Eyewitness News, along with Roger Williams and Mr. Fleming and Fleming Associates, have banged out a new set of numbers, and here was the latest report on the governor's race last night.
Gina Raimondo was squeaking out a slight lead over Alan Fung in the governor's race, but not with independent voters. Our exclusive Eyewitness News Roger Williams University poll finds Fung is leading with independents 43% to Raimondo's 25%. 19% of independents aren't sure.
She has to move that number up. She has to get some of those independents to come over.
Eyewitness News political analyst and pollster Joe Fleming says the Democratic Party in Rhode Island is so big, Raimondo doesn't have to get all the independents, but needs more.
And that's crucial for Alan Fung because the Republican vote is so small in Rhode Island. You have to do very well among independents. One
silver lining for both frontrunners, their favorability numbers. 50% of likely voters have a favorable opinion of Gina Raimondo, 48% unfavorable, 2% aren't sure. Alan Fung did even better with a 56% favorability rating, 31% unfavorable, 13% aren't sure. Raimondo spent more than $1 million in TV ads to improve her image. The poll shows she made slight gains with Democrats.
But overall, her favorability number has not moved at all, where Alan Fung's favorability number has moved by 7 points from 49% to 56%. So that's a plus for Alan Fung, and he hasn't even been on TV.
Right, so there's Mr. Fleming. You know, we're just chatting. We're just
We're already talking.
We're already, you know.
It was a really good segment.
It was.
During
It was
the
a great
piece.
segment. These gentlemen need no introduction. New numbers.
Yeah.
No
like
new
us.
news.
No, I mean, I said to...
Although Trillo's fit to be tied with you. We'll have some fun with you on that one.
All right. I said to Tim and Joe Fleming when the numbers came back, I said, oh, this is great. I can just publish my February story again, and I don't have to do any more work on this. I mean, This thing hasn't moved at all in our poll, really. It was about a 2-point race in February between Gina Raimondo and Alan Fung. It's about a 2-point race now. Not a huge number. You know, I'm always a little cautious under the hood with the different subgroups because the margin of error gets a little big, but still not seeing big changes under there.
But the headline does change, right? Because we're 5 months away from the February poll that we did. What has changed in that time? Gina Raimondo has spent a lot of money during that period. Ted calculated what he could for TV money, and it's over $1 million. And according to Joe Fleming, she made some improvements with Democrats, but otherwise flat.
Yeah.
Right. So I think all of us smart people about these things agree on one thing, that she has a level, and the level has a floor and a ceiling. And she's going to spend $4, $5, $6 million to get from the floor of the level to the ceiling of the level. Mm-hmm. And I think the level is defined as 39 to 45%. And it's like
I think you're right on, Dan. I mean, even in this poll. So if Alan Fung was the nominee for the Republicans, we had Gina Raimondo at about 39%. If Giovanni Ferrosi was the nominee from Republicans, she gets up to just under 44%. Yep. That's about a 5-point gain. And I take something from that because I say, okay, 44% of the people, depending on the circumstances, could imagine pulling the lever for Gina Raimondo. In this crowded field, that could actually win it for you. But with Alan Fung as the nominee, she comes down a few points. On Fung's side, it was interesting because he didn't have a change if Matt Brown is the Democratic nominee. Fung was at 37% against Raimondo, 36% against Brown. So he needs to find a way to move people into his corner.
Should we just run the screens and talk about the screens? Why don't we do that? And because the three of us could gaggle away until the end of the whole deal. Let's just rip some stuff, and then I have questions for these guys. Eric, just give me screens. Give me the screens as they come. All right, favorability rating for Alan Fung.
And this is up slightly from our February poll. This went up.
He was at 49% favorable.
Points.
Yeah. So this was an improvement for Alan Fung. You know, his unfavorables
without
are up
being on TV
a bit too, but yeah, without really having a very active campaign, he's got a little more than half the voters personally like him. This isn't a job
and
approval.
And he hasn't had a Cranston scandal.
Hasn't had a Cranston scandal this year, exactly, and so he's at 56.
And 13% of voters don't really aren't sure how they feel about Alan Fung at this point. So it can move in either direction, 13 points.
There's a randomness to the order of these screens, so I'm just going to keep popping screens up
We'll
here.
riff, don't worry
You can
about
riff. Matt Brown, Alan Fung. So you do this. You don't have a primary poll because it's tough to. It's just too tough.
Particularly with the GOP.
Particularly for the Republicans, and also because people have said, well, just do the primary in this poll, but it's a whole different universe of voters, and if we just ask the folks we talk to in this poll, and hey, what do you think of the primary, we might not get a representative group.
So Matt Brown is the former Secretary of State who was out of vision for a handful of years and has come back to run on the Democratic side. So what the polls do is they match up, here,
all
from this
hypotheticals,
team to that team, this team to that team. So Fung is handily ahead of Matt Brown. That makes sense. This Matt Brown campaign is an interesting campaign. Guy appears to be at least close to blue chip in the way he carries himself. I think Bob Flanders as a Senate candidate is an example of a blue chip type of timber candidate. The campaign, which you haven't covered in your polls yet,
Not yet.
is not blue chip. So it's just weird. But Brown, you could see Brown have the gravitas to be the governor, right?
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah,
He's no
There he is
gadfly.
in 06.
Yet he runs campaigns somewhat like an empty vessel.
What do you mean?
There's not much to it. He hasn't really raised a whole ton of dough. He's chirping away, counting on his progressive organizational skills and trying to tangle with her in a debate, and she's playing catch me if you can on the debates. We'll talk about that in a bit.
I think he wants to
know.
catch, like a lot of progressive now, he wants to kind of catch that Bernie Sanders, catch fire because you're very
Bernie
progressive.
raised a lot of dough
But he
in
did.
small
and
denominations.
He aired a lot of campaign ads. I mean, there was a part to the Bernie campaign, you're exactly right, Dan, that was actually very traditional. Ran a ton of TV ads. He had Tad Devine, a well-known political campaign strategist working for him. And Brown is so outfunded right now by Gina Raimondo with only a month left and almost half the people in our general election poll not knowing him. Clearly she's taking him seriously. I'm sure she has internals, so they must see we know there's plenty of Democrats.
I'm a little surprised he hasn't done more of the Trump handbook and tried. Maybe I'm not giving him enough credit to get more free or earned media. We hear from him. He pops up every once in a while on an issue where he'll put out a press release.
Or
things
if you
like
ask
that.
him to join you, he will. But it's not like he's banging down our
That's
doors.
what I mean. Yes, he's not upfront with trying to get free because he needs free press right now. He doesn't have the coin.
Believe me, all three of us have birdies, some in common, some not in common. But
it's a small state.
It sure is. But a significant birdie gave me something interesting that labor. In this state has really been thinking about investing in Spencer Dickinson, who, did he make the poll?
No.
Not in our poll.
He's a former rep. He's, right?
Former state representative.
Kind of kooky. Not really showing, but anything that breaks away the anti-Raimondo
So labor backing Dickinson
just
to hurt
giving them
Brown?
50 grand or something, to see if you can shake it up a little bit and see if you can chip away at Matt Brown, which tells me that, to your point, the Raimondo people are not taking Matt Brown lightly.
And I think they would, they release, it's different. Alan Fung's campaign, it's very hard to get them to say anything about Patricia Morgan, right? They want to pretend there's no primary. Gina Raimondo's campaign not taking that approach. They criticize Brown, they put things out, they engage. So I think you have to think that they are seeing that, okay, there is a possibility there. I mean, her numbers with Democrats were pretty good in our poll. But, you know, look at what happened to Joe Crowley in New York with Alexandra, Cortez, I don't know how to say her full last name, defeating him surprisingly, a progressive candidate. So I think they know they have to be on guard.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about movement for a candidate in this governor's race, but not so much. Stay with us.
Yeah, am I disappointed? Of course I'm disappointed, because to me, this just doesn't make sense. How does somebody's name recognition go from 67% down to 42% people don't recognize me? I'm up 24% in name recognition, and I didn't move the needle, not 1 point. It's impossible.
Wow.
I hope he stays in through the end, because he's great.
He absolutely swore up and down the radio yesterday that I said, Joe, if you're still at 6%, by the way, that's Joe Trillo, former state rep, longtime Republican, honorary chair of the Trump campaign, running for governor as independent, who got 6% in this poll versus 37% for Alan Fung and 39% for Gina Raimondo. He asks a good question. There may be a tangible answer. His recognition is up 25%. Should I steal your thunder? I mean, we're all saying
that's what happens when you run your yacht aground and you get a bunch of headlines, and not only that, a fight over a massive sign in Narragansett. So he's been in the headlines a lot lately, and as an Irish playwright once said, there's no such thing as bad press except your own obituary, right? And Joe Trillo is proving that point. But just because people get to know you or know your name doesn't necessarily mean they know where you stand, or like where you stand.
And the data is really fascinating too, because I predicted on the radio a few weeks ago that this would jack his attention high, but that he would pay the price for it. So he's literally trading negative gains for positive gains at a ratio that's pretty close to itself. So his negatives are coming up. His favorability came up a little slightly more than the negatives.
Yeah, but his positives outpaced a little bit his negatives.
Yeah, it's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 back type of thing.
But look, President Trump was underwater the whole campaign, I think, or most of it, and he won. And you're only going to need 40-something% of the vote probably to win this gubernatorial race. So, you know,
if everyone stays in,
if everyone currently stays in, so you could have someone with pretty high negatives be the victor.
Can you get 25% recognition growth and backfill it with people's thoughts on your issues? Yeah, if you educate them.
Sure, yeah.
Well, he's still at a 42% not sure. That's a really high number. So yes, has he made gains in name recognition? He's gone up, you know, double digits in name recognition. He still has a ton of ground.
And by the way, he's not the only one. Alan Fung, his name recognition went up significantly from the winter poll that we did, but he didn't gain any points off it. He has people who like him, but they haven't all been converted into people who are voting for him.
Right, because the campaigns are nothing burgers. No, they are. They're nothing burgers. If I went to the Warwick Mall, forget your poll. If I went to the Warwick Mall,
we spent a lot of money.
I'm sorry.
Forget the poll. God, it's 24 hours later.
In addition to this phenomenal piece of data,
you work here too.
if you go to the Warwick Mall and you ask 10 people, you know, just name the candidates and ask them what they stand for, you know, 8 of them would go, I don't know, I think one's the mayor, I think one's the governor. Nobody is making an imprint on saying this is the change agency that they represent, this is the program that will come to Rhode Island if you elect me, this is the vision.
I think that's a very good point.
There's nothing going on.
It's really, right now, it is almost
like a high school student council
mostly
race.
being run as a referendum on Gina Raimondo on all sides, right? She's like, here's the things I did, I think you should vote for me. Everyone else is like, she's bad, here's all the things she screwed up, etc. Not as much positive, here's what we're going to do. Now, again, I can hear the campaign's mayor saying, we put this policy out, we put that out.
No, but it's about the big picture. What do you stand for? You know, what's the concept?
Yeah.
What's the vision? I mean, more and more candidates have trouble with that vision thing. But I'll say this poll really points out a very important question for Joe Trillo. And isn't it funny that it's always the independent or the third-party candidate with a handful of votes in a tight race that actually becomes the most provocative story? Will he bail? Because even at the 6, he's in Ellen Fung's underwear right now with this whole thing, right? I mean, he's snapping his undies. If you don't have him in there, my guess is there's a slight percentage of Alan Fung growth here. And the more we get into this whole thing, that he's still at 6 or 8%, the pressure is going to be excruciating on him from his former base to get out of this race.
To your point, Joe Trillo is likely not stealing votes from Gina Raimondo, right? So when you say he's snapping his underwear, he's
Don't you like the freedom of the show versus
it is different from our day to day
versus the rigidity of Target 12 and Eyewitness News?
That is the first time.
I can corrupt these guys. If I do 3 shows in a row, I can change their careers. I can do it. I know I can do
That
it.
is the first time in my broadcast career I've said snap underwear on television. So I want to thank you for that opportunity.
Well, you know, it's I'm bringing at least something to the table.
I think just the I think you're right that, I mean, to have the front runners are under 40%, it looks like a mirror image of the 2014 race. You could almost say, look, people went to the polls that year. They gave Raimondo 41, they gave Fung 36, they gave Healy 20-something. And now it just feels like the people who are with Fung and Raimondo are still with them for the most part, and the others just don't know what they want to do.
You just don't have the Bob Healy in this race, and
Healy was the character.
Yes.
Healy stood for dismantling government as lieutenant governor, right? But it was years and years and years and years of being there. To be determined. At least Trillo has a couple of months to get his wheels moving here. And don't forget, John Robitaille made a big sprint, a big sprint from Nowhereville a couple of elections ago.
His folks always said, give him one more week, he defeats Chafee and he's the governor in 2010, which I could see that. Based on how the polls were moving at the time.
Yeah. So if I were Trillo, I would be doing a Gilligan's Island ad right now, poking fun at myself and putting a bunch of issues on the side of the boat. I'm not kidding. I mean, if that's what you're known for, and you got a big sign, you know, if that's what got you 25%, throw some data or some issues in the middle of that whole thing, maybe he catches fire. In the meantime, the race is flat and probably will be through this entire campaign. When we come back, we'll talk about what could be in this primary. Stay with us.
So, you know, my general take is, you know, sure, would I always would want to be higher? Of course, you try and move points every day. But I felt that it's always been a concentrated 1 month race. And that race starts on, you know, August 15th, August 16th, whatever you want to call it. You go 4 weeks hard, and there it is.
He's either smoking dope or a rocket scientist beyond the scope of political minds like ours.
It's that kind of sage analysis that we really look to you for.
Yeah, look, I mean, Bob Healy was the story of the day after the 2014 election. Certainly, if Giovanni Ferrosi can find a way to defeat Alan Fung and Patricia Morgan in that primary next month, he will be the story.
Giovanni Ferrosi is convinced. This is the former Alex Nine executive, fell into a big financial hardship with his Benris brand. He's convinced that he can target 15 to 20,000 voters literally by, you know, voter ID, the get out the vote operation that is undetectable in a poll. Now, to his potential point, you don't poll Republican primaries.
We do not poll Republican primaries. That's true. And for the reason that they're very difficult to poll because you don't know what the turnout's going to be. Is a Republican primary going to be 20, 25,000, 30,000 people, or is it going to be with Lincoln Almond like 60,000 people or something like that?
Yeah,
and Chafee, like, you just don't know where it's going to fall.
And there's so few registered Republicans that the independents who can go in can swing it so far one way or the other. So
it's an open primary.
And who we have not spoken about is Patricia Morgan, which in some ways she deserves because she's gone kind of stealth, at least with me. Although she texted me, oh, I need to get up. I don't know what the heck she's doing. If we have a Morgan, Eric, if you find a Morgan piece of data there, she's still 18 points down to Gina Raimondo in a general. She's reportedly anywhere from 40, Alan Fung poll, to her 11-point poll down at Alan Fung in the primary. I'm guessing the reality is somewhere between those two numbers.
Probably, yeah. I mean,
closer to her than the Alan Fung's number.
Yeah, I mean, look, Patricia Morgan, you know, 42-24. We did see her, as we saw with other candidates in here, make gains from our winter poll in terms of name recognition. More people know Patricia Morgan. She is, you know, decently liked by Republican voters. But look, she's a month out from a primary against the 2014 nominee, the mayor of our third largest city, someone with a decent-sized campaign.
And she's a fighter.
She is.
And she'd love to debate them everywhere.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, Mr. White.
Yeah, let's do
on
that.
the radio side, we work on our debate stuff. I mean, to a certain extent, we will end up with some candidates converging on this particular program, on this set. But when it comes to the television side, Eyewitness News is the star. There's been some historic debates, both primary and general election. These guys do a phenomenal job. And I rely on them to get this stuff done. But it ain't easy, brother, right now this year.
In 2014, Ted and I, at this point, had already done 2 pre-primary debates, and we had 2 more lined up to go. We have obviously already made invitations for a debate in 2018, and the 2 front-runners, Gina Raimondo and Alan Fung, have one thing in common. They both have not committed to debating their primary opponents. I think, one, we see this in incumbent years, where the incumbent is going to be a little more reluctant to legitimize another campaign through a debate, give them any oxygen, and they have more of a bully pulpit to do so. And I think my analysis with Alan Fung is he got a little bit of a jam with the debates in 2014, where he went so far to the right with Ken Block, it was more difficult for him to tack back to the center. So, you know, right now for them it's duck and cover. But that being said, I think it's easy to do that in July. I'll be very interested to see how August plays out.
Well, that's Drew. Yes.
Yeah, I think. Look, I think the voters. In the end, the voters will decide. If Gina Raimondo and Alan Fung feel pressure from voters who think they deserve to hear from these people before they anoint them as their party's nominees, I think they'll do it.
Where are we going to hear from them?
I don't know.
Talk radio,
yeah.
social media.
Yeah.
Seriously,
I think the campaigns would hear from them, not us. I mean, I think that's going to be where this would be. Look,
Well, Alan Fung is too cute.
And that's a story about it. This is a story what we're talking about. You're talking about it because it's interesting. I'm doing a report in our 6 o'clock news tonight on why.
Which means
so
it's
far.
Already been done. We tape in the afternoon.
Right. That's right. Thank you. So, and you know, I'm sure other media outlets are going to start asking the question, where are the debates? What's going on?
Right.
So I think that's where the pressure is going to come.
Yeah, no doubt. But Alan Fung's playing it too cute. You can't play the role of prima donna Republican primary dude and then blame Gina Raimondo for playing the role of prima donna. You can't get it done. And by the way, to the left, to the right, you know, veering left and right, I think there's value in that analysis. But at the end of the day, people make decisions on aesthetics more than they do on specifics and issues. And so not doing debates is
well, that's the thing.
And by the way, Matt Brown made a speech on the radio today, I think on Tara's show, that we're going to run, that we already did. Timing. But he's talking about the democratic process and debates. The challenger is always screaming about the democratic process. The incumbent's always playing rope-a-dope. She has to. I think she could withstand, you know, even an empty chair debate on Channel 12. Man, an empty chair debate becomes newsworthy. You guys have a lot to decide. The television stations have a lot to decide, and even WPRO, as to how you want to present if Gina Raimondo says, no thanks. Well, look, you could damage that campaign significantly by doing the empty chair. And my vote is, do it.
I think I do think there comes a point where the refusal to debate is a bigger problem for a campaign than doing one debate. There's no way we're going to have a series of 20 debates with these 2 primaries.
No,
but if you agree to one, which we've seen historically sometimes,
it's always
a front runner.
There's 3 major TV stations and there's a major radio station. It's 3 or 4. If you don't do it, I think you're going to put yourself.
Well, and especially if it's 0.
Yes. Good work.
Thanks, Dan.
Keep your undies in check. A final word.
I'll try to do that.
Tomorrow night on the program, we're going to take a look at the hands-free legislation and how your behavior has accommodated and progressed there with the Police Chiefs Association of Rhode Island. It is a pleasure to be with you in the evening. Thank you. I'll talk to you on the radio tomorrow at 3 on WPRI. Good night.